Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rethink the Road. With our unique challenges and games, we take our entrepreneurs on a trip down memory lane and make them rethink the road that got them where they are. Today, we have with us the founder of the Wedding Brigade, Sana Bora. She completed her bachelor's in economics and development studies from Brown University, where she co founded a campus food business, which turned out to be the largest student run business at the time. She then started a career as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley in New York. And after two years, she quit her job and moved back to Mumbai and launched the Wedding Brigade. She was also listed as the Forbes 30 under 30 in the Asia retail and e-commerce sector in 2018. Is there anything else that you would like to mention about yourself?
No, I mean, I think you've covered most of the main points. I guess one thing I will say is that, when I moved back from Morgan Stanley, I didn't found the Wedding Brigade straight away. I did some research. We kind of launched another beta version of the company called India, and then it eventually turned into the Wedding Brigade a few years later.
Okay. Perfect. So I guess we can start with the first challenge. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So we help you make the most of the moments you live for by offering the best inspiration, little star emoji, products and services for your special celebrations. Hashtag never stop celebrating.
Oh, that's 18 seconds, so perfect. And
Okay, amazing.
that's a really nice way of describing what you do. I guess like I want to start with also you mentioned how you moved from New York to Mumbai and had like the beta version. So what really inspired you to get started with the Wedding Brigade or like even try like the beta version? Like what was your journey like and what I guess inspired you to move from a corporate job?
Sure. So, as you kind of touched on yourself, I had a small business in college. It was called 2020, and we basically gave discounts at restaurants around campus during off peak hours. And so, I had a brush with entrepreneurship. I knew at that point in time that, bringing an idea to life and actually like making it happen was something that like really excited me and I was really passionate about. And so, I knew eventually at the back of my mind, even when I was at Morgan Stanley, that I wanted to move back towards, starting a company from scratch and building it from the ground up. But I didn't really have any ideas or anything specifically that I wanted to do. And so while I was in the job and I decided, I want to move more towards the operational side of things, I still wasn't thinking startup. I was thinking that, okay, I'm going to go work at a larger company, maybe in the Bay Area in the tech space, learn a bit more, go to business school, and maybe then I'll have an idea that I really love. But what happened was that while I was still interviewing with some of these companies and still working at Morgan Stanley, I came to India on holiday. And my good friend's older sister was getting married in a couple of months, and she was just telling us about the wedding and showing us, their outfits, the jewelry, the hotel, the decor, like everything that they had sort of planned. But like, I mean, across WhatsApp groups, email chains, Word documents, various websites, I just remember thinking, wow, this is chaotic. This is just incredibly disorganized. Like, how could this be how people plan weddings? There's so many people taking time off, traveling, yet it seems like there's so much left to do. And I went back to the States and I just started doing research, and I realized that in other countries there were these wedding portals that really kind of aggregated, the best services, content, products in one place to make planning easier. So you have, the Knot, Wedding Wire, which are now one company in the US, Zola as well. You have Hunliji in China, Zexi in
Yeah.
Japan. But despite India being so large and having such a like culturally significant wedding market,
Yeah.
nothing like that really existed in India. And so I just thought, it's really not very often that you come across an industry of this size with no incumbent where you have genuine interest. And I shouldn't wait, because who knows if that opportunity will be around, in 2 or 3 years when I feel like I'm ready. And so I just dove in, and I was, lucky I had supportive parents. They were like, yeah, sure, why not try? Like, now is the time to try. And, that makes you feel like you have a bit of a backstop. It's not that I wouldn't have a place to live if things didn't go right.
Yeah.
So I think all of those factors sort of gave me the confidence to get started.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Was there like any particular moment where I was like, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna leave, or was it like built up over a few months?
I would say it was built up over like maybe 2 or 3 weeks because I realized how inefficient it was in India, but I didn't actually like think that I wanted to do anything about
Anything
it.
about
And then I was sitting at work and I just like, that conversation kind of popped back in my head. And then I started looking. And
it?
when
Yeah.
I couldn't really find anyone who was doing exactly that in India, that is when I was like, okay, there really might be something here. And as soon as that kind of thought came into my mind, I think part of me was already convinced, but obviously I had to do a little bit more work before I could convince other people that it was a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's interesting to see how like your entire thing was, because a lot of people do end up going abroad to do university and then get a corporate job. And many people like stick by it, or like a few people I think have want to have similar journeys to you in terms of like have that experience and then move back. So I guess it's also inspiring to see that there is a chance where like people do that, have enough experience to I guess build um just like knowledge in the corporate world and then are able to start something of their own and be successful at it. So yeah, I would definitely say that's an incredible experience so far. The first one is similar to what we just spoke about, but when you started university or your corporate job, was quitting and going back to India ever part of the plan? And yeah.
No, it wasn't officially part of the plan. I mean, definitely not in the near term, but I really thought
Yeah.
I would work in the States for a while longer. I think, in general, at some point in my life, returning to Asia was something I wanted to do because just a little bit of background. I did grow up partly in India, but I also grew up in Singapore and the Philippines. And so, and my
Yeah.
parents still live in Southeast Asia, they live in Manila. And so, I think Asia was definitely going to be somewhere I wanted to be eventually, but no plans on doing it immediately, and no plans actually on like specifically coming back to India either. Until I think when I had the idea, and the idea was for Indian weddings. Obviously, I could
Yeah.
have maybe tried to do it in a couple of other places as well, but I like the idea of coming back to my home country and building something for my home country that could employ people in this country and
Yeah.
help people in this country. And so that was a part of it once I had the idea, but definitely not before.
Yeah. So the next one is the Wedding Brigade has raised over $1 million in a pre-series A extension round of funding. Um, was the VC route always part of your plan, or did you ever consider bootstrapping?
Um, I think the VC route was always part of my plan. It
Okay.
was sort of, I wouldn't say expected, because you can never really go into it expecting that you will 100% raise funding or that,
Yeah.
your company will succeed. But it was something that I was clear I wanted to try. One, I think, given my finance background. Two, I think I understood sort of the power capital has, right, in terms of scaling your business and differentiating your business and hiring good talent. So, expected to a certain extent, but I mean, we've tried many different, like the actual path wasn't expected. I wouldn't have expected I would have raised a pre-series A extension round. When I started, I thought, okay, it'll be, seed, series A, B, C, etc. But that
Yeah.
hasn't been the case. We've, raised a few
Multiple.
smaller rounds and
Yeah.
kind of tried out different business models before we sort of figured out, okay, this is exactly what we want to focus on, and what our core competency. Oh, what is the word?
Competency.
Competencies are. Yeah, I'm saying it wrong 3 times and it's not getting any more right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, yeah, I saw that there were multiple rounds at your previously one, which is amazing. And I think, I guess my question is that, what is like one advantage of going through like the VC route, compared to like doing it all on your own? I guess more like besides the financials, if there was like one other advantage you would say.
Um, I think it would be like advice and like perspectives from people who have worked with other companies that have been successful, right? You get
Yeah.
access to not just like one founder who's built one company, but a bunch of different people in VC, each who have probably spoken to 1,000 companies each during their lifetime, and have worked intimately with probably at least 20, 30. So that's, I think, quite valuable.
Do you think that sometimes like the other opinions have like a negative effect on like the way you want to build? So in like, for example, like it makes an effect on your decisions that would generally not happen. And like, I mean, do you ever question whether you went with it the way you actually initially planned it would be like different and better, or is it that the opinions that you get are genuinely valuable and has only made a positive effect?
I don't think all opinions are valuable. I think some
Yeah.
are valuable. Some are not as valuable because they're not people who know anything about the industry, right? And a lot of times they're not
Yeah.
even people who know anything about the country. And so you have to kind of figure out, which ones to like really take seriously and which ones are people just sort of shooting off the top of their head
Yeah.
with random ideas based on their own experiences that may not really be relevant to what we're doing. So it really could go either way. I think we in fact didn't do some things that some of our competitors were doing at one point in time, even though people were saying, why don't you try this? And it was it was like a high, I would say, like GMV business, very very low margin business, and it wasn't something we really wanted to double down on because I just didn't
Yeah.
see how that scaled in a sustainable way. And so we actually went against what some people were saying. But I mean, I think that was a good idea in retrospect, because that part of the wedding industry, really, really collapsed under the pressure of the pandemic.
Yeah. um is there any, like, since you've like spoken to multiple people and like had that like filtering process, is there one thing that you do on a regular basis to filter out like the good and the bad opinions?
Um, I don't know if I really necessarily have a process to filter out the good and the bad. I feel like when something doesn't sound right, I'm not even going to spend too much more time thinking about it unless it's from someone I really care about, right? Or someone
Yeah.
whose opinion I really respect, and I will give it the time. But what I usually do is, whenever I hear something I like or read something I like, I make a note of it, and then I have like a time every morning before I start work where I come back to some of these things and can go into them in a little bit more detail. But the bad ideas typically don't even get a note. So just the good
Okay.
ones.
That's perfect, because yeah, I think that yeah, just like reflecting on the good ones is a good practice instead of even having like the bad ones, because I think sometimes when you can overthink it and then make the bad a good idea. So
And there's honestly in this space, there's so much that you can do. This isn't like
yeah.
a niche product, and now them trying to figure out who else it can be applicable to. It's this massive universe where you can do
Yeah.
everything, but you can't do everything well, right? So it's
Yeah.
actually just about focusing on a few good things first, doing those well, and then kind of taking it forward from there.
That's an interesting point in terms of like focusing. I think that at least when like a business is starting out, I feel like every opportunity that comes across is interesting and you want to like jump on that. So like, how do you make sure that you focus on like what you want the wedding brigade to be like for long term, and like say no to even like good enough opportunities that just don't fit well with what your business stands for?
I think we can do it more easily now because we haven't done it easily in the past, and we've,
Okay.
faced the consequences of it. We've definitely tried to bite off more than we can chew, and then your resources are split, your mental energy is split, your budget is split, and you can't actually do justice to one idea if you're trying to pursue all three. And so I
Yeah.
think we've realized now, yeah, that we are going to do things one at a time. We're only going to kind of focus on certain categories, focus on certain types of content, and do really well there. And we will say yes eventually to other ideas, but
Yeah.
in time. We're not going to say yes to something just because it's a good idea. It also has to be the right timing for us as a company.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That like I guess like timing plays an important role. And yeah, as you mentioned, you don't want to stretch yourself because then it's just like neither at a point. So yeah, the last question is what is one collaboration that was completely unexpected?
Um, so I don't know if it was completely unexpected, but something that was really cool was that last May, sort of in the depths of the pandemic, uh, the entire industry was honestly not in a great place. Like all the weddings that were planned were being cancelled. It was clear that even sort of the second half of the year was going to be impacted. There was just a lot of, I think, uncertainty and fear, and also sort of figuring out what the new normal was going to look
Right.
like once like the initial lockdown got over in India. And we organized this Zoom conference where we had people like Manish Malhotra, Vishal Punjabi, Vandana Mohan, Natasha Moore, Renu Basu, literally like the best designers,
Yeah.
hoteliers, makeup artists, wedding filmers, decorators, and us. And we did like an hour long session with them. And it was honestly incredible because the entire wedding fraternity in India attended and listened. And it was just like very hopeful, very supportive, very collaborative. And to get someone like Manish Malhotra to come and
Yeah.
speak at an event that you're hosting for free as well,
Mhm.
and do it just to sort of like collaborate, do it just to sort of like support each other in the industry. I just think it was like quite magical actually. And so that was one collaboration in a way that was special.
Yes, that sounds amazing to have like so much here. Just like I think also during the pandemic, a lot of people started coming together and being supportive of every business. So like looking at that and seeing that you were able to host an event like this is incredible. Even like I guess like the wedding industry was like probably one of the most hit industries in the pandemic because it was at a complete stop. But I saw that y'all had a lot of blog posts regarding like weddings during a pandemic and like how to have it with a small group of people and to continue I guess like celebrating and things like that. So I think regardless y'all did a lot even during the pandemic to keep like the wedding hopes like going.
Yeah, it's a fine line, I would say, in the sense that once we were out of lockdown and people were having 50% weddings, etc. We
Yeah.
were obviously telling them how to have it, how to be careful, what to do, what
Yeah.
not to do. But as a brand, actually, especially as we went into the second lockdown as a country, which is now kind of in the process of being lifted, our sort of point of view was just don't do it. If you can avoid it, because it's not
Yeah.
worth it at the end of the day. Like it was a really bad situation, honestly, especially in cities like Bombay, Delhi for a
Yeah.
little while, that even as a wedding company we were saying just wait,
Mhm.
come to us, go look at ideas, shop online if you want, do all of your planning and preparation. But if you can avoid having a wedding during this time, do it, because there's a lot of stress that comes right from hosting a wedding in such a crazy situation, and you
Yeah.
don't want to put like other guests in danger, you don't
Yeah.
want to put your family in danger. And so yeah, it was sort of a fine line we had to walk depending on what the situation on the ground was.
uh, was there anything like yeah during like the lockdowns and things like that that y'all adapted that was different from what y'all originally planned just to like as a business to continue staying active?
I think we like ended up focusing a lot more on content and e-commerce. So we, as you had kind of mentioned, we were publishing a lot of articles, doing a lot of activities on social media
Yeah.
to generate content, especially around how to plan a wedding in the new normal. And on the e-commerce front, we onboarded a lot more brands. We started doing more promotions because people were still celebrating, right? Even if it was on a small scale, or they still had festivals that they were attending, or small pujas and things at home. And so we really focused on scaling up, our selling of wedding and ethnic fashion, costume, jewelry, gifts, and favors. and because that was honestly what could work during the pandemic, and took the focus a little bit away from services which weren't as much in demand.
Okay, yeah. And do you think that like now that people like India is known to have like the big fat weddings and things like that, like have hundreds of people, sometimes thousands. Like, do you think that's gonna change given that now people have had smaller weddings, or do you think it's gonna bounce back to just like the big lavish wedding?
um I think it depends. I'll tell you what my point of view is. I think for
Yeah,
sort of like your, middle income weddings, a lot of times a wedding invitation is something you extend like even as part of sort of your business, right? Or as
yeah,
part of your just a way to be like gracious to your extended family,
yeah,
etc. But I think there in those cases, if a large wedding is allowed, a large wedding will happen. I think for slightly um, higher income groups, what would probably happen is you have that same kind of obligation to call people to like a large function, whether it's a big reception or an engagement. But I do think that parts of society will choose to have smaller celebrations for some of the key functions, like maybe have a very small wedding or a mehndi or a small destination trip, with some of the
yeah,
key ceremonies, and then have a larger celebration, in their hometown where they have to invite everyone. So I do think that that's going to be a shift, and I think having some kind of online presence for your wedding, whether that's streaming it, whether that's having a Zoom call along with what's happening on the ground, I think is also going to become common, because it's just a great
yeah.
way to be able to involve people from abroad, people who may not be able to make it, people who have a conflict. So I think that will also continue. One challenge we faced was getting vendors and brands to agree to partner with us, especially when we were, in the early stages of our business. One challenge we faced was growing our social media presence, again at the early stages.
Yeah.
And another challenge we faced was figuring out the right business model for our company in the beginning when we, started off as a content
Yeah,
platform.
that's a tough one. They all seem like very like realistic challenges that any company like would face. I would say the one that you faced was probably the last one, like the business model one, to try and sort that out at the initial
Well
stages.
done. Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
there were so many things we could try. So we did try
Yeah.
quite a few models before we figured out. I think I may have hinted at it earlier, so maybe not the right question, but anyway.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, for us, the first two were relatively easy. And not easy, I wouldn't say easy,
Yeah.
maybe easy is the wrong word, but because we were a free portal, we weren't asking brands to pay. They were okay kind of taking a chance on us in the beginning.
Yeah.
And with the content, I think that was something we were able to, get right from the beginning. And we got into the space, a little bit earlier, not during the sort of like crazy influencer heyday, maybe,
Yeah.
a year or so before. And as we kind of said earlier, timing does make a big difference.
Big difference. Yes, definitely. And yeah, I think so. In terms of like the business model, did you, like you mentioned, you tried and tested? So how is that like going in and out of different models look like when your business is like fully launched?
I think it wasn't necessarily that nothing was working in the beginning. Like some things were
Yeah.
working, and so what we would do is when something was doing well, we would keep doing it, and we would then experiment on the side with other things. And the goal is to
Okay.
just sort of get feedback as quickly as possible. So don't try and launch like a massive finished product and hope that then only I'm going to let people test it and see if they're interested in it. The goal is to kind of get something up and running quickly. It should be okay. It shouldn't look like
Yeah.
horrible or have a horrible user experience, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Get the feedback as to whether it's working or not and move on. And I think what happened with time is, yes, okay, it's good to have like a very fast sort of testing cycle, but we also realize that we just need to like think a little bit harder before choosing to test something. We don't have to build and test everything. We can,
Yeah.
do our work ahead of time, figure out what we're focusing on, and then only kind of do testing within that little, area.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the agile approach of just like going in and out in terms of like what you're testing is a very like recent development in like the way businesses work. And I think a lot of people are adapting to that to just like launch first and then see, like take feedback and grow as and when, instead of making like the perfect product and launching at that point. So yeah, it's interesting to see that you've also like taken a similar approach and to see like how it's worked out. Do you think that, I mean, obviously this is like anything can happen, but like in the near future, do you see yourself again adapting to another model, or is this what fits right for you currently?
No, I think content and e-commerce are definitely going to be our focus over the next
Yeah.
couple of years. But as the market opens up on the services side, we are sort of exploring products that are a little bit more online based in terms of,
Yeah.
booking services and planning the wedding. So that is something that we have been exploring actually for a little while and will hopefully be
Yeah.
launching soon.
That's exciting for sure. I guess even for you as an entrepreneur to see that your business is continuously changing and you can adapt and you would be exciting every day to be a part of that instead of like the same, I guess, cycle.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, even if we had stayed in, but I think when you're an entrepreneur, whether your business is growing or changing, like every stage is different. Like even if
Yeah.
now this is what we're focusing on, I'm sure with every stage of growth there will be new challenges and new things to figure out. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. The first one is, how many all-nighters did you pull in your first year of the wedding period?
I don't think I've pulled any like full all-nighters. I mean, I've definitely like had at least like maybe a couple of weeks with like just like a few hours of sleep each night, but
Yeah.
I don't think I've had to like stay awake for a full 24 hours. And
Oh,
that's the beauty of having your own company also, right? Like you can kind of
yeah.
choose when to work. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes that's like majority of entrepreneurs then end up working 24 hours instead of
Yeah. I mean, you work all the
work.
time, but
Yeah,
you
all
can
the time.
choose to like, like in banking, if you want to go get dinner, you can't always choose to go get dinner. But here
Yeah,
you can say, okay, I'll
again,
get dinner and
yeah,
I'll work after as well, so
yeah,
there's a little bit of choice.
yes. Did you ever question whether it was worth it?
No. I think like
Uh,
even like in the hardest days, like I can say confidently it's been worth it.
that's a good mindset to have. When did you make your first profit?
Um, we're not like fully profitable as a company right now. Like we are close, but in
Yeah,
terms of like we have had like months where we've been uh profitable. Um, and I honestly don't know if I can like pick out what the first month was when we got there, but like it's a great feeling, right? At the end of the
yeah,
day, like knowing that you can stand on your own 2 feet, especially if you've raised venture funding. It's usually not a goal too many people have, but for us, it's
yeah,
important, and we're kind of working towards that again.
yeah. Amazing. One word to describe your emotion when you reached a community of 1 million people on Instagram.
I think elated.
Emotion when you first fired someone.
Mm, like trepidation, it's nervous. It's not a
Yeah,
little bit anxious. It's not fun to fire someone.
yeah. Weirdest place you've worked from.
Um, Once I had to do like a proper like interview Zoom call with a panel in like a tree house in the Philippines with like very spotty internet, and I could hear like a lizard in the background, and I'm
Oh
deathly
my
afraid of lizards. It was a challenging interview to say the least.
God.
Yeah.
But that's so cool, like in a tree house in the Philippines. But besides the lizard, I agree with that. But what is your biggest weakness?
I think I don't know if it's my biggest weakness, but definitely a weakness is that sometimes I find it a little bit hard to let go. So I can micromanage a little bit sometimes, and I'm trying really hard to not do that. To let people do things the way that they feel is right, and just kind of go with it also and see where they end up with it. I tend to do it more if like something is not working. If something's working, I'm
Yeah.
very happy to kind of let people move forward. But even when things are not working in a certain way, just giving people a little bit of space to figure it out. I think that's important.
Okay. How many enemies did you make in the process, if any?
I don't know if we have like enemies. I mean, no, there's no one like who's like an enemy, so to speak. There are definitely some brands or vendors we don't work with because the it just didn't make sense. Either they wouldn't send things on time or they wouldn't kind of do things according to our protocol. But it never like ended in like a really bad space. It just kind of would end with, like we need XYZ from people that we work with, and
Yeah,
maybe it's not a great fit, but no enemies really.
that's good. Which hobby of yours did the Wedding Brigade kill?
Kill. I don't think it's actually killed any, funnily enough. Because I believe honestly that you need to do certain things where your mind can be completely on something new and can't and doesn't get like distracted. Like what happens with something like TV, it's very easy for me to just open my laptop and start answering emails or working on checking on something else while I'm watching TV at the same time.
Yeah.
So I've actually picked up a couple of hobbies where I can't be distracted. So one is
Okay.
more recently during the pandemic, I started playing the ukulele, which has been really fun,
Oh
and there
wow.
you have to stay focused. And another is an old hobby, tennis. I played it kind of growing up, but I think I got back into it over the last couple of years as well, just because, yeah, I just really like the break, being able to fully focus on something else, and it just refreshes you.
Yeah, definitely. Books or podcasts?
Books.
iPad or notebook?
Notebook. I don't really use my iPad very much. Like I love my Kindle, but I don't use my
Yeah,
iPad very much. And if I'm thinking especially, and I'm like doing or if I'm doing
thesis is
something
that.
creative, I have to physically write, and then it
Yeah,
eventually will get on my laptop. But the initial process, I find a notebook very helpful.
it's easier to like pen it down instead of using a more technological device.
Yeah.
Favorite social media?
Instagram.
Yeah, so that concludes like our final segment, and we'd like to thank you so much for giving your time and being a great guest. Is there any motivational quote or learning you would like to leave the audience with?
I don't know if I have a quote, but I think one learning is when you initially get started, and once you've especially sort of like gotten a little bit off the ground and your business has started to run, there's a lot of small stuff that comes up every day, like I call them small fires, that you need to put out, right? And it's very
Yeah,
easy to just spend your entire day dealing with these tiny issues, micromanaging, getting into everything, that it's easy to lose track of the bigger picture. And so I think one thing I would recommend to any early stage entrepreneurs, really, once you started, keep thinking about the bigger picture, like actually pencil in time for that every week, because otherwise you'll get caught up in the small things, and you'll forget what the bigger goal is that you're working towards. So that's one piece of advice.
yes, thank you so much. That's a great piece. I think that, like as you mentioned, it's easy to get caught up in like the smaller things, and then you forget what like the entire thing was for. So I think a weekly reminder of like what you actually want to do is important. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun actually.